Meet you this Saturday morning. Where are you geographically?
I am currently in New Jersey, and
Oh,
I'm here for a little while. I've been traveling immensely. So last year I was in 65 cities across 4 continents, 10 countries. I just got back from Antarctica actually last
ooh,
week, and
ooh,
it's the seventh continent I needed to go to. So yeah, I've been traveling a bunch, but I am in currently New Jersey.
very cool. So you're not a flat earther because you've been
Moon
to
Revelation.
you've been to
Yeah.
the
So,
Antarctica. Whoops.
Exactly. I've seen it with my eyes. I've experienced it, and it is actually it's a breathtaking place. It really makes you feel like you're in a different world entirely. It's mountains that jut up hundreds to thousands of meters just straight out of the water, and they're just covered in ice, and massive glaciers surround you 360 everywhere you are. It truly is surreal.
Wow, how cold is it though?
So I was there in the summer. That right now it's southern hemisphere, right? So summer, and it was actually warmer than it was up in the northeast of the U.S. and close to Canada, basically, because it snowed recently up here, and there it was about 0 to -2, -4 Celsius.
Not too bad.
Yeah, not that bad.
That's not too bad, not too bad. So I like to start my interviews with the biographical sketch that you offer. So I'd like you to go back to childhood, talk about the journey. I think you've seen a couple of my episodes, so you know how it works. So just fill us in.
Of course. So I'll give you sort of a brief runway through because there's obviously so much as we talk about a biographical background. So I grew up in New Jersey, and I was raised in a spiritual family, meditating since I was 5 years old, which I'm very grateful about. Really, no religious background at all, just really purely meditation was it pranayama and forms of yoga. And so actually started to become engrossed with the material world quite a lot. And by the age of 12, I decided I wanted to become an investment banker so I can make lots and lots and lots of money and just live a comfortable, secure life and have one of those high flying lifestyles. And so I went to college. I went to New York University in Manhattan, and I studied economics and history. And after that, I landed a job on Wall Street, my first job, where I worked at a British bank for about a year and a half. And then right after that, I landed basically my dream job as an investment banker at Goldman Sachs. And so I worked at Goldman for about 6.5 years, on Wall Street for 8 years in total. And it was amazing. I loved what I did. I closed over $100 billion of transactions in my time at Goldman and climbed my way to vice president. However, something interesting happened on the way. In 2020, my mom went for a 30-minute outpatient thumb surgery to fix a partially torn ligament. She couldn't be aroused after the surgery, was intubated, rushed to the ER, having severe seizure activity, and was on life support for 3 weeks before passing on. And my mom was my rock, my hero, my role model. She was literally everything in my life. And after that happened, I spent the first 6 months just trying to pick up the pieces for myself and my family and go back into my meditation just to seek peace and solace. And then what happened was in the first 3 months of 2021, I started to receive messages from outside of myself in meditation for the first time in my life. And the message was consistent every single day for 3 straight months. You need to help people. You need to help people. You need to help people. And mind you, I'm an investment banker. I have no idea what that means. I thought making the rich richer is what I'm supposed to be doing and just living that lifestyle. And so this is a total wake up for me. And I'm like, what do I do? What is this? Like, because it asked me all the existential questions. Who am I? What is my purpose here? If I literally was suddenly vanished from this earth tomorrow, would I feel fulfilled with the life I live? And I started to really go deep within myself. And over the course of that year, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about repeating numbers or angel numbers. I started to notice these numbers incessantly because of my role in finance. And eventually I started to learn, like read about them, and people called them angel numbers. And I started to learn about Pythagoras from the Greek philosopher in 600 BC. He's known as the father of numerology and claims that every number in the universe carries an innate vibration, and when put in numbers or when put in sequences or amplified, they carry messages. And so I was like, oh, am I being communicated to by angels? And then I would start to basically dive deep into this aspect of tuning in with whatever signs I'm being sent from outside of myself. And then as that unfolded, I was guided to learn things like life coaching, breathwork certifications, energy healing, plant medicine ceremony therapy, body work, just like really like completely 180 degree from my life as a banker. And I decided to just start helping people. And eventually I really started to get clients actually immediately when I just launched it to friends and family. And people were like, wow, you totally changed my life. And I was like, wow, I've never been told that as a banker. Like, this feels like something really fulfilling. And so, being analytical, I also calced it out a little bit. I was like, how long can I support myself while simultaneously doing something that I love if I made no money? And so I jumped out of Goldman being like, okay, I can support myself for 3 years. So I left and I have been on this path of what I call now consciousness research for the past basically 3 years. And it's been something that continually unfolds in new ways and ultimately felt experiences, which is what I strive to bring other people through retreats or different experiences like that.
So, just a couple of biographical follow-up questions, as I always do. Just talk a little bit about the parents and siblings in terms of, you said there was no religion growing up, but in terms of the journey, I mean, how many siblings do you have, and have some of them gone in wild paths in terms of faith, philosophy, or any kind of practice?
Yeah. So, it, backing up, I guess my mom was raised as a Sikh in
Oh,
India,
okay.
and so she was very devout, and she went to the Gurdwara, and my dad actually mentions that being one of the biggest factors that attracted him to her. My dad wasn't necessarily as spiritual or had a practice like hers, but but was in that realm somewhat. And in 1992, they joined this path called Self Realization Fellowship, which is founded by an Indian guru who came to the US in 1920 to teach meditation. And I have one sister. She is 5 years older than me. She is actually a Harvard trained physician. And both
Oh,
her and my brother in law are amazing doctors. And they are very similarly deeply spiritual. So they're on this same sort of spiritual path of meditation, self realization through meditation.
wow, interesting. So, yeah, it's funny. Did your parents, forgive me if you said it and I didn't catch it, but were your parents both born in like northern India or?
Yes, correct. My parents were both born in northern India. They both studied immensely hard. My dad was a merchant marine engineer, and he actually sailed the world for most of his life. Him
Ah,
and my mom actually sailed the world together for a while. They have
ah,
amazing stories like
ah,
being in Iran during the Iranian hostage crisis and the
oh,
boat pulling away, and my dad calling up to the
wow.
captain saying, "There's something wrong with the engine. We need to stop the boat here," because my mom wasn't on the boat. And so the taxi pulls up to the dock. My mom
Wow.
hops on, and he calls back to the captain. He's like, "All right, we're all good. We can go." And the captain was like, "There was nothing wrong, was there?"
Oh, that's
So
hilarious.
yeah, they have some amazing stories, and they really, I honor them and I commend them for the life I live, because they came to the US and really made the American dream happen. They had to go back completely through schooling because the US didn't honor
Recognize.
any of their degrees. Exactly. And I hear the story all the time. They came to the US with $7 in their pocket, and they really grinded and sort of made a life for themselves here, which allowed my sister and I to thrive and flourish. So really grateful for that.
Yeah, wow. So in terms of language, culture, music, food, have you got a lot of the Indian culture or not so much?
So great
Hmm.
question. I I actually spent a lot of my childhood pushing away my background and heritage because of I just didn't feel accepted. I was primarily surrounded by Caucasian people growing up, and I wanted to assimilate. I wanted to feel like I blended in. I wanted to feel a part of that. And also there were small aspects of racism as well growing up, which you wouldn't normally expect. And 90s 2000s, but and especially in the northeast, but there was aspects of that which kind of created its own mechanism for me to try to fit in more. And so while maybe my cousins may be more sort of overtly into Indian music and culture and dance, I appreciate it. I see the blessings that it has given me now. But as a child, I actually tried to do the opposite as it pertains to how can I find more ways to basically feel like an American to fit in here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you look very young. How old are you?
I'm 31.
Oh, you look good. You look very good. So did you manage to find a wife yet, or what's happening there?
No, so that's not here yet, and I think
Uh,
I've gone through such an exploration as it comes to relationships, both going through just the college life and then post grad living in Manhattan and the fast paced life, and really not really having time for a relationship as I worked 80 to 100 hours every week. But there were like, flings or whatever that might be. And then I went through this period of time after my mom passed on where I just really didn't want any of that. I actually shut myself down to love, and I remember me telling my sister, I said, "What's the point? If someone is just going to die and leave you, why do you even want to have that love?" And it was just such a dark, low place for me. And my sister's like, "No, like you have a lot of love in your heart. You have so much love to share." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." But I think right now I'm on sort of, and I'm very open to it now. I'm very back open hearted now. But I think right now there's my passion is sort of calling me forward, a mission that feels like genuine service to others, and how I can exemplify that is really my core directive. And I'm kind of not kind of I'm very aligned with these synchronicities that show up in my life. And so things have started to unfold for me in the last few years in ways I could never even expect. And so that's what leads me to believe, like, if something's meant to happen, it's one of these things that will flow into my life, much like a lot of these other experiences have come into my life, just like meeting you, for example.
yeah. How did we meet? Remind me, because you emailed me. You said you saw a video, or what
Vinay,
happened?
Vinay.
Oh, okay, Vinay. Right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Do you know him personally?
I actually do. So he actually found me through my YouTube videos. I
Oh, is he?
made a
Are you
bunch
the
of
guy that he plugged? That he said I should talk to you. Are you that guy?
I'm not sure. Am I that guy?
Because he said, "Oh,
Possibly.
you should definitely talk to," but I don't think it was Neil, but maybe. So anyway, so you know Vinay.
I know him because he found my videos on YouTube. I went to an ayahuasca retreat in the Peruvian
Oh,
Amazon, and
okay.
he sort of has just watched some of my videos, reached out to me, and because he lives in New Jersey too, he
Oh,
invited me to this large Indian temple, and also seeing sort of one of the swamis that he works with, just to just show me around, which was
ah.
incredibly grateful for that. So yeah, that's how I met him. It's just been that's what I'm saying about these synchronicities. It's like, how do you just open yourself up to the magic that is actually around us at all times, guiding us to the people that we're supposed to meet?
Yeah, well, my wife and I traveled on our honeymoon for a couple of years, few years, and there's this thing called traveler's magic. I'm sure you're aware of it, but it's just like, you meet who you need to meet, and things just happen. And I miss those days because now I'm working, and working sucks. So the romance of travel, and of course there was the new marriage, and it's just so romantic. But my friend is asking, Greg is asking. I want to give a shout out, by the way, to my friend Jay in the live chat, and Greg. Greg's asking a question about your relationship with money, finance, and investment now that you've sort of undergone this transformation or whatever.
That's Greg, that's an awesome question. And it's actually one of the core things that I think part of my life journey is here to first and foremost deeply understand for myself, and in turn actually guide people as it pertains to how they can navigate these sort of material and spiritual or metaphysical dualities of the earthly plane that we live in, which is I took after I left Goldman, I took a step back from really being in the markets nonstop because that was literally my life. I would not wake up without opening Bloomberg, CNBC, Financial Times. Like it was everything. I had to have my pulse on the markets. And after sort of having this year or two detox, I've began to come back into it in a much more measured way, to the point where I don't let it be all consuming in my life. So I'll work with people, be it financial advisors, that will sort of help me navigate this so I don't become as intensely focused. It can be a passion, it can be something I'm interested in, but it doesn't need to be my whole life like it was last time. And interestingly, I still have a deep uh, love for business, the business side of things, making investments, and talking about travelers magic. I recently was hiking Chile and Patagonia right before I went to Antarctica. And I met someone who was involved with curtailment services um, for renewable energy assets like wind and solar farms and things like that. And so I began talking with him. And so he was like, "Hey, like we're looking for investors in this project. You seem like a pretty smart guy. A lot of our partners are similarly quite intelligent in the space. If you're interested, I can send you our deck and things like that." And and so like the thing is like the right opportunities are kind of find me. And so I still love that aspect of how can I continually learn the financial nuances, business, legal nuances that I spent so long of my life really diving into, and still use it in a way that is able to help me and help others in sort of a global sense.
Yeah. So, thanks for sharing that. It's all very interesting. So, do you, let me just ask delicately, but with your life coaching, if you wanted to, could you make a modest living or a moderate living or a good living just with the life coaching? Like, you don't have to tell me the numbers, but is it something you figured out how to? Because I saw your website looks pretty slick, so I didn't dig deep into it, but if you wanted to, could you make a living that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
so where I am, I'm at this place where it actually completely supports my lifestyle.
Oh, no
I'm
way.
not, yeah, I'm
Ah,
not making a exorbitant amount of money. I'm not making that 600, $700,000
yeah.
salary that I was making at Goldman. Granted, I've only been doing this for about 3 years as well. But what I've looked at this part of my journey as, I'm still picking up a lot of the knowledge that deeply interests me so that I can bring that knowledge in a very serviceful way to others. So I don't just do life coaching, right? I
Okay.
do
Okay.
I do energetic
Uh-huh.
space clearing, I do energy healing. I'm learning body work later this
Okay.
year. I do angel card readings. Like it's like a whole ecosystem. I run retreats
Uh-huh.
around the world. I did 2 retreats last year, doing 5 this year. And so
Okay.
it's become this ecosystem of what I'm doing. Again, I think it's how you grow something in a measured way, and it's serving itself right now.
Yeah, I want to dig into all that, what I call new age, all that new age stuff, because I was in the new age before I became a monotheist. But first, I just have a little side question, and it's been bothering me when you talked about your poor mother passing away. That it's tragic. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm just curious. It's another delicate question, but it has to do with COVID. Was this before COVID? So it's unconnected to that whole COVID nonsense, or what?
Yes, it wasn't because of COVID. It was because
Okay.
she went for this surgery. So
Because you
she
said
went for this.
intubator, and I just thought, oh, because that killed a lot of people. Those intubate the ventilators killed a lot of people.
Yeah, no,
So
so that wasn't the cause. The cause
okay.
was ultimately the surgery, because
Oh,
then she couldn't be aroused after the surgery, and she was having severe seizure activity. Like truly, like when I saw her, and this was hours after, she was like literally having these myoclonic jerks, and I was like, "Whoa, this is wild." And so when that happened, the whole point was you kind of need to support the body in a way so that you can hope to restart the brain, is what they were ultimately trying to do before she succumbed to an infection in the body. So it wasn't COVID, but it was during COVID times, which actually made
oh,
the
oh,
ability to go see her in the hospital incredibly
oh,
difficult. And
oh.
even at the end of life, it was me, my dad, my sister, and brother-in-law trying to go up, and they were like, "No, you can't go. Only one person." And I remember this moment. It was nighttime, and my sister was like, "This is an end of life situation. Like, you're really not going to let a family go see someone that is about to die." And I think that is that was just a pretty wild instance in and of itself.
That's horrible. Yeah, I'm so horrified by that. But I don't want to dwell on it. It's sort of like it's so tragic, and it was just started with a problem with her thumb.
That's it. It was just she actually brought in groceries and tripped over a puppy gate that we had for our new dog,
Wow.
and it was just like it
Wow.
was bothering her. It's an elective
Okay.
surgery, didn't need
Yeah.
it, right? So,
Yeah.
but she was like, "Oh," she worked in a hospital as well, and some of the doctors were like, "Oh, it's simple surgery, like that's no problem."
Mm,
And if someone's, it's like a what I imagine is like probably getting a wisdom tooth removed or like a
right.
colonoscopy.
Yeah.
If something is like that innocuous, well then okay, like
Yeah.
why wouldn't you fix something so that you don't have arthritis or something? I don't
Do
know.
we know why it went wrong? Who's to blame, so to speak?
We don't entirely know, which is it's been a an
Nightmare.
interesting journey. So, but yeah, that's the thing. It's like a whole.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I won't dwell on this. It's very dark, but we just, I trust in God. I believe in a transcendent God who's gonna give us justice and mercy. So we don't need to worry. But you don't believe in the God that I believe in. Why do you not believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the one true God of monotheism? The Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims, we all worship this God, and the Hindus don't, the Sikhs don't, the Buddhists don't, the atheists don't, and the New Age people don't. But why do you not jump on board with monotheism? Because I was atheist for 25 years, and I had a conversion experience. What do you think it is about you that you haven't been ready yet to investigate it or to jump on board?
I actually would say that I do also believe in the God that you believe
Oh
in.
yeah. Ah.
Yeah, I think
Ah.
that I think it comes into this aspect that there are many religions, there are many paths. There is one ultimate truth.
Yeah.
However, the ability to recognize and realize and feel that ultimate truth resonates with any given individual does not matter to me. It is simply a mechanism for the realization of that truth that is equivalent across all religions, all thoughts, all aspects. I sort of look at all. I've had different experiences myself, and I'll say specific experiences that have pulled me into a space of feeling more pure non-dualistic, which is this sense of um, there is nothing and simultaneously everything. And it almost goes a little bit step further than just pure Buddhism, which is this aspect of there's genuine oneness and the aspect of the mind realizing this oneness. But the way I see it personally is it is a feeling of oneness that transcends the existence of everything. And so I went into a dark retreat actually at the end of last year where I spent 132 hours in complete darkness. And I had an
Wow.
experience where nothing existed, but that nothing was simultaneously everything. And I wrote this thing, which is like nothing is by definition nothing, which is therefore nowhere. And everything must then be somewhere. And if somewhere there is everything, everything must be everywhere. But if nothing is somewhere and everything is somewhere, everything must also be nothing. And so it's this sense of I believe in a singularity of source consciousness and how it manifests can come into different ways and different purviews for different people. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I disagree in the sense of a God that you believe in. I believe it relates to different people differently.
Yeah, but I don't know if you've seen me say this before to my guests who are New Age or Hindu or Buddhist, but it boils down to the core difference really is that I believe that I'm in danger. There is a possibility that I'll end up somewhere dark, hell, and you don't have that belief. You don't share that belief. So basically, you have good news, and I have good news and bad news. So the bad news is I could end up in hell. The good news is God has offered me a way to escape from that horrible destiny. And because my first parents, Adam and Eve, fell, this is what we believe as Christians. Because our first parents fell, I'm born into slavery to Satan, and I'm by default on my way to hell. So it's like I have to accept the offer that God has given me through his only begotten son Jesus Christ to go to heaven. That's the Christian story. But your story is very different. Your story is that we're all just fragments of God or elements of God or aspects of God or a dream of God or Maya of God, whatever you want to call it. But basically, the only reality, the ultimate reality, is God and heaven. There is no hell. There is no possibility of a real separation from God. That's only an illusion. So it's a really, really, really big and important difference. You know, I have hell,
Yeah.
you don't. So how do you address that difference?
Yeah. So what it feels like you're referring to is this aspect of what I view as semi-dualism. It's where there's this aspect that feels like God is love, but it's like a less threatening aspect of God than just pure dualism. And I think what can happen is you're right. You see it as a little bit of the self as a body with God in the world outside of you, where I see it as this point of basically everything in this singularity of existence in which it is not different from me or not expressively in any way outside of me. You're right that the word illusion or illusory aspect is something that uh, comes into play. And I think where that differs for me is at least in my own personal and what I'll say experience, because it's not simply teachings that I was given or things that I was told to read. I've read various commentaries on the Bible. I've read various commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. I've read various aspects of the Quran. My grandfather read the entire Quran. And sort of I have many Jewish friends, so I know aspects of Judaism. So I understand these monotheistic religions and where they're coming from. I think, but where it differs from me is it's no longer just about what a text is telling me, because a text is simply something that humans have contrived in a limited form of comprehension that is limited to the spoken word or the written word. But in actuality, for me, something which is the realness is actually the felt sense experience. And so that for me is meditation. Because the way I say this is, well, if I told you ice cream was sweet, but you never tasted ice cream, you would have simply a rote understanding of what it means to have a sweet aspect of ice cream. But for me, that changes from the understanding to the full felt experience. And that's kind of why we live this human existence, to actually feel what it's like. And so for me, I've had these experiences in meditation where I genuinely transcend my body. I am not here anymore. It is not me. It is not nothing. It feels like a pure merging with an infinite experience or an infinite oneness, which is kind of why this aspect of feeling like a pure non-dualist comes into play for me as this experiential manner.
Yeah, yeah, I'm well familiar with all of that. My friend is asking about the Sikh or Sikh religion. If you are like sort of educated on that, and if that sort of seeped in by osmosis, my words, not his, but he's just asking if you embrace or reject any different aspects of this Sikh religion.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily outrightly, call myself an expert in Sikhism or actually any religion at that. I'm not. I would say what my passion actually is experiencing what all of these religions have to offer as it relates to their sacredness. So when I go to Jerusalem, I'll experience the aspects of all of the three Abrahamic religions. I'll go to the church where the Roman Orthodox believe that Judas betrayed Christ, or I'll go to the church where the Armenian Orthodox believe that this happened, or and so what I'll do is I'll actually just understand what makes a space feel sacred for anyone. And so I don't necessarily dive into Sikhism, but I know I sort of understand it peripherally. I've been to Sikh temples, I've been to Gurdwaras, so I like to experience these aspects because I don't believe that one religion is right and one religion is wrong. I think it genuinely rolls back up into this same aspect in which all of creation is being created from.
You've traveled a lot. Have you been to your parents' hometowns, or have you been to India, traveled around extensively that
Yeah.
area?
So I've actually only been to India once in my life. I
Okay.
went for a month and it was when I was a kid. So it was back, I
Oh,
believe, in '07.
uh,
And but I did travel around. We traveled the entire country. They showed me all of
oh,
the amazing sites
sacred
from the
sites too.
top, all of the sacred
Oh
sites,
yeah.
like truly like yeah,
Oh,
oh yeah. It was a full month. Like they were like, we're gonna bring you like on an in-depth experience of the country. And so I have been back. I actually haven't been back in probably close to 20 years now. So a
uh,
lot has likely changed.
yeah.
But the thing is, when I got there, I was just so struck. We landed in Mumbai, at night. And when you pull out of the Bombay airport, you're surrounded by slums. And as a kid, growing up in like very affluent New Jersey, you don't see that ever. And so we pulled out, and like I was just like struck with the level of poverty. And like there were beggars that would come up to our car that like had their eyes gouged out, and it's just it like really hit me as a kid, and it just like made me feel really sad. And so that's why I haven't been back. I haven't found the opportunity to go back, but I think it's calling me at some point in the near future. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's traumatized. I'm sure you're traumatized somewhat, and that could that could help you and hurt you in different ways depending on how you handle it. But I often think about the fact that a child is dying of hunger every 7 seconds or so. In 2024, that's shameful. We should be ashamed to be human. If that's the case, I mean, I think we have the means if we had the will. If there's where there's a will, there's a
Hmm.
way. But a lot of people with power, they like to treat other people as a means to an end rather than treating people as an end in themselves. That's the Christian way of looking at that predicament that we're in. But it's very dark. Can you comment on that dark side of human selfishness?
Yeah, that's why I think one of the biggest things we can do is I think tithing holds such an important place in my heart, as well as compassion. And I think that when we have the means to, and the thing I also want to dissolve around that is the aspect of shame. Because I think shame breeds more of a lower negative energetic vibration. But I think what we can rather do is we can understand the predicament that we're in and where we came from, but be so forward thinking in the progress that we choose to create and make, and be the agents of that change, that we are the ones that can be that catalyst. So that's why I believe that those who have the capacity and ability to, in whatever way, even helping one person or helping one aspect of helping uplift some aspect of society, to be that extension for other forms of consciousness. Because I do see everyone as one. I see this aspect of reflection of mirrors within every single person that I see. And so it's kind of this feeling of, well, you're only as strong as your weakest link. If everyone is one, how do you uplift the weaker links to make everyone feel like they're on a level same experience as a human being?
Have you, in your other travels as an adult, have you talked with extremely poor families or people in maybe Latin America or somewhere? Um, and if so, what did you learn about the human condition from their poverty and the way they live in that poverty?
I love that question. And I absolutely have. It's actually one of the two things I say that are most meaningful in my life are the people I meet and the places I go. And when I go to, you're right, Latin America is actually primarily where I traveled across Central and South America for a lot of the last year, and also in places like Tibet or even Africa. The things that really hit me are the need for basic necessities. And I think that where like NGOs probably go a little bit astray is you'll have someone come into a country like Sierra Leone, and they're going to try to do all of these humanitarian efforts, and the thing is they just need food and water. That's it. They need to just subsist. A lot of these people, they don't have access to clean water. And I think you can't. And if we talk about things like Maslow's pyramid of hierarchies, right, where you have these basic needs that being met up until feeling emotionally connected, then ultimately to self actualization, self transcendence. These people can't even begin to fathom what this higher part of the pyramid is, because they're so focused on how do I get my basic needs met. And so I was actually part of an organization called People to People International. Throughout my childhood, I was the president of a chapter growing up in high school and middle school, where we did various things like shoe drives for children in Haiti. We did coat drives for Mongolian earthquake victims. We did landmine removal in Sri Lanka. And so the whole point is, how do we actually start to actually help people with the necessities that they need, instead of saying, okay, this money is going to go to your government to help them do XYZ? Because that actually we don't really know where that goes. But if we can actually do ground roots movement to actually help people with, okay, this person needs a coat because their house was destroyed and they're in Mongolia and it's freezing cold. Well, yeah, okay, let's go out and raise some coats and ship it out there. So those are the kinds of things that I think is a lot of these sort of, other areas that need that upliftment can use.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I want to ask you something delicate, but it's not your wheelhouse. I'm just asking you because I'll ask anyone the same question. Okay, don't feel like that I'm putting you on the spot, like you're some kind of expert on politics. But when it comes to politics, maybe you do know a lot about politics. I don't know. But when it comes to politics, the idea is nice. In democracy where we have representative democracy, so you take the best part of your community, best guy or girl, you send them to the group of representatives, and then among that group, they'll select one to send to the higher level, and then so on and so forth, and then you have one guy or girl at the top. That's sort of an ideal of representative democracy, but we don't really see that in reality. What we see in reality is people hungry for power. Hey, vote for me, put me in power, and I promise you this, that, and the other thing. And then, it's a lot of broken promises, it's a lot of lies, and it's a lot of vested interests. And so I just want you to talk about the corruption on the political level, and if you've in your travels, if you've seen something grassroots where it really was a community connected, and this guy or gal is very talented, so let's elevate them, and they can speak for us with higher levels of government. Is there any grassroots politics that you've actually seen, and how do you compare and contrast that with what I call just sort of corrupt power mongers?
Yeah. It's so interesting you asked this question. So I recently was traveling through Guatemala, Chile, and Argentina. And all of these three countries are going through massive shifts and upheavals in their political system. In Guatemala, for example, there are massive protests that are happening where people line major streets as thoroughfare, basically like their highways, and it stops all traffic. And for days, you cannot even get to an airport. You cannot move across because there's these mass protests. In Chile, and I asked the question of the locals there, like what's happening? How do you feel about everything that's going on? And even in Chile and Argentina, the biggest things that people sort of talk about in terms of how a new president or how a new leader gets into power is really economically driven in almost all of these countries. It's all, well, whatever's happening now is not great. And so we will find any new option that is going to help us economically because there is hyperinflation, because we are unable to sustain ourselves economically. We are either cut off from global trade. And then it's interesting because once someone then comes into power, you see this aspect of them actually not being able to hold up to the promises that they keep. And this is around what some people in Chile were telling me. And I believe they have a new young president, and he's not very well liked because he is unable to hold to some of the promises economically that he put in place. It was primarily around COVID, when it was around people being able to, I believe, withdraw from their retirement funds or something like that. And similarly in Argentina is like really going through a whole black box of economics right now. It's really forging into the unknown, and their current leader actually doesn't really have any political background. He's primarily an economist who is basically trying to forge a new way to basically stop hyperinflation and understand how Argentina can support itself. And so it's what I've come to understand is that politics is really hard, and it feels like it's I don't know what the word I want to use is because it it's it, it's tough. It's a really tough subject to touch on because I think you're right, and I think what I want to sort of emphasize is where I think politics is going to go in the next 10 to 20 years. And I think if we see across the globe right now, elections are taking place in numerous countries this year, or are about to, or just have. And I think what's happening is we are going to see a shift away from the way things have usually been run because people are really just done with it. And so what I mean by that is I think we're going to see political systems be massively overhauled, or we're going to see political revolts possibly, or turnings of various tides as people now start to move away from people who are power hungry, people who feel dictatorial in why they are seeking to create something that isn't actually genuinely based in the serviceful good of the people that they are meant to serve. And I think we're going to start to see a shift that's going to actually take this grassroots movement.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say what's going to happen, but you know, my sort of cynical view of politics is that, you know, it will always be the same story. The rich and powerful will keep their position because they have the means to keep their position. And of course, there will be a toppling here and there, but the guy who takes his place will just do the same thing, just try to maintain the power. I'm not saying that politicians don't ever have goodwill towards the people. I'm not saying that, but there's a tendency for power to corrupt, and power likes to maintain power. And you know, I think it's rare to find a political leader who is self-sacrificing, you know, at his own expense, to serve the people and the interests of the people. I see it sort of like a pyramid where the people at the bottom are kept down, and you know, the developing world, what we used to call the third world, and these sorts of things. Africa, you know, I saw a very passionate speech of some African lady talking about the systemic uh, ills that keep Africa down, and all the wealth of resources they have, and these sorts of things. And you know, there's so many issues connected with it, like, you know, racism, sexism,
Mhm.
whatever, which are all very complicated and hard to unravel. But you know, the basic idea, it boils down to goodwill and ill will. And you as an individual, you know, you've got $1 one vote. Like, you know, you could you could boycott this or that. I don't know how effective that is, but you know, it's in terms of like what you're doing with your spiritual journey. You know, try to be a force for good, and try to help people, and you know, the charitable work that you do and these sorts of things. um, I think I think it does start with the individual, right? That's why I'm so excited about grassroots stuff, and I'm excited about these populist movements, even though I think they're co-opted by the big guys. You know, we think about Trump. You know, I got excited about Trump just because it's a populist movement. I don't trust the guy. I don't necessarily trust him, but I like the fact that people. It's the same thing with the truckers here in Canada. I don't know if you were aware of that, but in 2022, the truckers had a protest against the COVID lockdowns and stuff like that, because the truckers need to ship the goods, right, for us to eat. So there was a big protest in our nation's capital, Ottawa. I know you've been to Canada, but I don't know if you've been to Ottawa. That's our nation's capital. But anyway, you know, I just support these grassroots, the people, you know, these populist movements, even though the leaders that they prop up and that they pretend to be on our side, but I don't necessarily trust them, you know. So what do you think about populism? Because we've seen it in the Arab world a couple of years ago. We saw it, you know, we see it in the States with Trump, and we see it with this Mealy guy or whatever. Even though I don't trust him either. But what is it about populism? It seems to be in vogue, even in Europe, different places in Europe. So what do you make of the whole populist movement?
I think it comes down to actually even a step before that, which is something you mentioned. It starts with the individual in and of itself, because what happens is when the individual chooses to change or chooses to have an aspect of themselves that they want to see reflected in an overarching political system or governmental system or economic system, even, they first need to embody it. And it's often this aspect of talk is cheap. So, how can we, and we often see people say, who can be like the first one to say something, but it's often harder to actually be the embodiment of a designated change that you want to be for yourself. And I think where populism needs to take a step back first and foremost is it needs to come into the individual. It needs to be individualism first. How can that individual not just talk the talk, but walk the walk in all of the aspects that they choose to hope to create? Because when that happens, and this is when we're going to get a little bit metaphysical, but an energetic frequency will change naturally. What makes you feel drawn to someone when you walk into a room? What makes you feel like, oh, I don't really want to go near that person when you walk into a room? Well, it's simply a frequency that the body gives off. We are atoms and electrons moving. And so you energy is also emotions. Emotions carry that. How can you first be that energetic full embodiment for yourself that says, okay, this is what I believe and this is how I'm going to directly put this into action, first for myself, then for maybe my friend group or friend circle, then for my community. And I think populism needs to take that step back to individualism first, to then start at the root level of the person themselves, to then create and build that community bigger and larger until it reaches the point where there is a mass collective of people who not just believe it can be different and want it to be different and say it should be different, but actually embody the principles of what it means to be different.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I tend to be a bit of a rebel and a bit of an individualist. That's not necessarily the Christian way. That's just my predisposition. You know, the Christian way, you know, well, first of all, we're supposed to be with the poor, on the side of the poor. That's the Christian way, you know. So it's I like that part of Christianity. But we're also supposed to be part of the community in the Christian walk, you know, very concerned about our brothers and sisters. I also like that, but I'm not so good at it. You know, more of a loner. But my friend is asking about the gold standard. Do you think that the American money should get pegged to the gold standard again, or what do you think about that?
Fascinating. I honestly don't even think they could do that. I think
Uh,
if they tried to do it, it would be complete turmoil
uh,
in the sense of it would be mass economic depression, because
uh,
I really don't even see that happening. And given how many other countries around the world rely on the US dollar as their core form of currency, primarily in the developing world, I think you will actually see some really big ramifications on a negative level, on a world economic level, if that were to happen. So I think that it's an interesting concept that it really, I'm not a full PhD economist in this, but I think it would be very difficult for them to do that, especially at the rate in which the US government prints debt. It just feels incredibly difficult.
yeah. You know a lot more about economics than I do. So I'm just wondering, how does it all work? Like, are people that, you know, I talk about the elites, those rich and powerful people, but a lot of them are losing their hair and losing sleep because they're actually concerned about these big decisions, right? So I'm not minimizing the humanity of the elites, the rich and the powerful. They're rich and powerful because they're intelligent, first of all, and talented, okay? And they do care about the families, they care about stuff, okay? So they're fully human. I'm just saying that power tends to corrupt. So opportunities come, and then you take the bribe or whatever. Like, yeah, that's in politics, but in you know, in business, you know, there are opportunities to cut a corner here or there. It's just not. It's just human nature. But these are talented, intelligent people, and they do care. So I'm wondering, are there checks and balances globally and at different national levels, economically, to make sure that someone doesn't make a big mistake? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, hey, let's try this foolhardy idea, and it just totally destroys everything. Are there checks and balances? And what kinds of what are the roles at the top of the sort of hierarchy globally to make sure, you know, that things are running smoothly? Who's overseeing that? Or is it just a bunch of independent people that never even meet?
Yeah. So my understanding of it is, and I'll start with the U.S. and then sort of expand. Is there are aspects of checks and balances for sure. And so what you'll see is monetary policy is primarily put in place by the Fed, whereas fiscal policy is put in place by the U.S. Treasury. So you do have a separate body that works in tandem with the government to ensure that things are as smooth as possible. And the Fed in the US, for example, is what sets interest rates. And so every month or every quarter, depending on the Fed meeting schedule, they will all meet, and then all global markets and US markets will keep their eyes on, okay, what does the chairman of the Fed say in terms of what he believes is happening in the economy? Are interest rates going up? Are interest rates going to go down? And as a corresponding result, you'll see dramatic changes or maybe no changes in the equity markets, bond markets, given financial markets as a result. That's a US basis level. Most of these other countries in the world similarly have central banks, which are able to offer some form of either monetary stimulation or quantitative easing, in the sense of when there is a situation happening within the country, either hyperinflation or something is happening to the consumer prices, they will step in to be able to regulate and make the dynamic less intense. So maybe, in the early 90s, you would have seen lines for the gas station that would have taken 4 days for you to get gas in your car. You would see people bartering for loaves of bread during the Great Depression or whatever that looks like, which you don't see anymore. And so I think that in and of itself has sort of shown you that there is a progression in that standpoint. However, it isn't necessarily perfect. And I think it also ties back into this aspect of politics. With everything that we're doing, we're kind of in new uncharted territory and water as it pertains to what are we really doing here, because no exact situation is the exact situation as it was previously. Yes, history may repeat itself in certain ways, but there are other variables that have come into play. And so I think as we go along this journey of the human existence, it really feels like it's sort of a movie that we're comprehending and understanding as we go about it, to understand what sort of policies work, what don't work. And so but then on top of that, you mentioned, is there some overarching body? I wouldn't necessarily say there is any one overarching body. Sometimes these central bankers or these politicians come together in various summits, call it the UN, or sort of different forms where they will come together and talk about collective monetary policy. But it's a complete sort of, it's a dance that I think they are also trying to figure out as they go about what happens, and simultaneously, there's this aspect of human instinctual ego that is also trying to fend for itself throughout all of this. And so we see that in politicians and anyone who is an elected official who is basically, okay, how do I continue my career? How do I get reelected into this situation? Even if a situation isn't necessarily a decision that needs to be made for the highest good of everyone. We've seen politicians go to war to get reelected, for example. So it's like this sense of, how do you balance a collective interest with an individual interest? And I think that that's part of what humanity is starting to try to uncover a little bit more as we head into this next age.
Yeah, well, my wife makes fun of me because I'm Catholic. She's anti-Catholic, but there's this sort of idea that the Catholic Church wants to have one world government, and there's a part of that vision of a one world government that I can buy into, but I don't believe it's actually good here in this sick fallen world because there's so much corruption. But the idea is nice. Like, I mean, for me, I'm pro immigration. I'd like to have just open borders everywhere, everywhere, no borders. But that's a very naive thing. It's not practical, and I'm not going to run for office and with that as my platform. It's just a dream. Like, hey, why can't we all get along and be friends and not kill each other? Like that's what I want. But when it comes to one world government, a lot of conspiracy theorists are very scared about that, and for good reason. Like I said. But what do you think about that? The globalist agenda, WEF, all that stuff, and one world government, one world religion, all that sort of stuff. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, I first want to acknowledge that every country and every place of this world has such incredible gifts. Truly, every country has a gift that they can offer and they can share with this world, be it a gift of the mind, or a gift of more tangible physical goods, or a gift of philosophy, or a gift of way of going about life. Truly, anywhere. Talk about German machinery and precision in mechanics. You can talk about the way of sort of US in terms of some aspects of how capitalism can work in a positive way, right, without going to overboard extremes, which it sort of has done in the US. But there's small aspects that you can take from everywhere. India, you can take sort of this aspect of spirituality. You can take different pieces from different places around the world. How do we pull the best parts of what every place in the world has to offer and allow us to share those in a way that is globalized? And I think that is starting to create the inroads for creating the level of cohesion that you want to move towards, a sort of this feeling of one world oneness. And the beauty is, I don't necessarily think everyone needs to be one per se. And what I mean by that is, I don't think everyone needs to be a cookie cutter model of the exact same thing, because without that, then you wouldn't really have any interaction necessarily. in this space time as we live in. I think the beauty of individualism is that everyone brings their beauty to the table, and that the darkness can simultaneously be integrated as part of that. And what happens when you allow everyone to come together that shares their innate gifts in a way that uplifts everyone? Well, then you start to remove these barriers that we see the difference or divisiveness of the other. So the difference of color, or the difference of gender, or the difference of sexuality. Well, how can you start to accept the other person as if they are part of you? And so I love the aspect of coming together to build a cohesion of unity within the world, within consciousness. And I think that in that, everyone simultaneously as an individual has beautiful gifts to share, which if everyone just became a cookie cutter beige person, just like the same look, same feel, same thing, you wouldn't have this level of deep connection or understanding of where we are currently in the level of human development and human consciousness that I think needs to be fully creatively expressed in order to allow us to come into a deeper connection with each other.
Thank you for sharing that. So, one of the things that's going around on the internet for the past few years is this whole white supremacist thing and white power, and like you talked about how you kind of wanted to be a bit whiter, growing up or
Mhm.
whatever. And I'm happy to be white. I'm as white as you get. I'm very white. English, Irish, Scottish, Welsh. Like it's just like I'm very white, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. But unlike a lot of right wing people today, I'm not worried about preserving the white race, so called. Like, you know what I mean? It's like I'm really not worried about that, and I'm attracted to white women, so I married a white woman, so whatever. But if and I do find race mixing a little bit weird. Frankly, I do find it a little bit weird. But that's just me. But I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about the race mixing, and that's why I want open borders, because I'm not scared. I'm not scared of the Mexicans or the or the blacks or anyone. I'm not scared. And if they have bigger numbers, okay, well, whatever. So what is it about the whites? And I want to ask a connected question. What is up with the Jews? Because the Jews, there's so many conspiracy theories about the Jews. They want to control the money and the power and all these sorts of things. Have you heard about that in the banking industry? What's your experience with the Jews? Personally, I love the Jews, but what's your take on the whole white supremacy thing and then the whole Jewish supremacy thing?
I think the idea of any form of supremacy is kind of silly because it pegs or views one person or one race or one class as better or more deserving than another, which I innately don't believe is the case. Because it almost comes back to this feeling of the initial conversation that we had around dualism and non-dualism. Well, if everyone is me, then everyone is a reflection of me. And I'm not sure. Have you seen this show called WandaVision? It's like a show on Disney. The concept is there is this superhero named Wanda, and her superpower is basically she can what she did is created an alternate world or reality in which she operated and had everyone in that reality brainwashed to believing they were just living a normal world. It's almost like the Truman Show, that Jim
Uh,
Carrey movie that came out about 30 odd years ago now.
is it
And
really
so
that long? Wow.
I think it's close to 30. It's close to 30.
Wow.
And so it's basically this feeling of, okay, Wanda has created this world and we live in it, and there's other characters in it that are sort of brainwashed or don't really understand that they're just going through the motions. The the way I perceive reality is that we are actually all Wandas, but we have forgotten our ability to be this creative power. So we go through an experience in which we are feeling a little bit robotic and mechanical, but we have forgotten that in actuality, we are the ones that are self creating the experience of this world that we are living in. And so that is sort of how I view it. And then that is where I think this aspect of supremacy of any kind doesn't correlate for me, because if we are all Wanda, if we are all this creator aspect, well, then no one race or person is greater than any other. Everyone is an equal in each way. And so I think that for me is sort of where we come back to the word illusion. That's where I think we have become far engrossed in our egoic illusion of the world that we're living in, and becoming too engrossed in just like, okay, this is the way it goes and this means that I'm better, and because that means we're getting over occupied and over identified with this world rather than with ourself, or with our spirit rather.
Yeah, well, you touch on that word identity. Identity politics is so toxic. You know, for example, like I'm Scottish, Irish, whatever, heritage, and there are plenty of Irish jokes about Irish people and whatever. It doesn't bother me, but I'm not actively being repressed economically because of Irish stock. So maybe that's why I'm cool with all the Irish jokes or whatever. But I guess it does come down to power and privilege and the left. And I wanted to ask you, I wanted to ask you about the whole left right thing because it seems like if you were in banking, it seems like that's sort of like a right wing sort of lifestyle, and then now you're into the new age, which seems totally left wing. Did you ever identify as left, right, center, and how is that shifted around for you? And we're gonna have to wrap it up here, so.
Yeah, for sure. Great way to wrap it up. So I think growing up, my parents typically leaned quite left, just being sort of immigrants and on social issues. I actually found myself to be quite moderate, and what I mean by that is I was quite um, socially liberal, and I would say fiscally conservative, right? Because I was working in the banking space, and oftentimes the right wing has better sort of financial policies for people who are earning a lot of money, and whereas I simultaneously cared a lot more about the social aspects of how the left wing were treating most of the humanity, and so I actually don't relate to either one side or another, and I really do consider myself a moderate. And the thing is, I will actually most align with someone who feels they are able to most able express the core values that I have. And money is an aspect of that, but it is not everything, right? Like I think the social issues and where we are heading as a society, what is in the greatest good for the greatest number, while simultaneously also working for myself. So it's like what works for everyone simultaneously in a way that nothing is going to be the glove that fits everyone. But oftentimes for me, that is a lot more of the social issues that I care about, because I want to see, as I talked about in the beginning, a rising tide lift all boats, because we are only as strong as the weakest link. So how do we get everyone to sort of a more level playing field?
Thank you for that. I put a link in your description to nealbakshi.com. What can people find there?
Yeah, so you can that's my website. You can find basically what I'm all about, what I like to study and research as it pertains to consciousness. I have a blog which is very active. I put out blogs every week, if not multiple times a week. You can find the offerings that I do there in terms of what I like to create. So the retreats is a big thing that I love to create. Create personal experiences for people, angel card readings, coaching sessions, energy healing sessions, breathwork sessions, meditation classes. I teach workshops in person around the world. So you can find all of that there. And then also, if you want to just stay up to date with sort of my latest content, just follow me on Instagram at neal.bakshi. That's where I really just push out most of my content on a weekly basis and interact with people who want to just hit me up one on one.
Very cool. Well, thanks for reaching out and thanks for coming and chatting with me. And come back anytime. You have an open invitation. Just come back and chat. What's your next trip? You said you're just temporarily in You said you're in New Jersey
New
now. Is that right?
Jersey. Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
what are you planning for your travels and in the near future?
Yeah, so next up is Mexico, where I'm going to be literally
Oh,
going to create the Mayan celestial healing retreat that I'm going to be running around the winter
oh,
solstice
cool.
in December. And so we're going to be going to Mayan archaeological sites,
Oh,
temazcals, finding astronomers, um,
oh,
going out to Cozumel. So I get to create that, and then I'll be heading also to Spain to learn multidimensional body work, 150-hour intensive, and likely Italy for the summer for a bit. And then I'll be going to Egypt to lead two other retreats that I'm having there. And then up to upstate New York, where I'm leading another retreat, and then
ah.
back to Mexico.
Wow, very busy. Yes. So stay healthy and have fun. And I'll be praying for you and yours. I'll be praying that you meet a nice woman. What race of wife do you want? Do you want? You want... Ideally, be honest. Be honest. Do you care at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I am primarily attracted to Caucasian women, to white women. So that's sort of been those have been the majority of all of my girlfriend. Actually, those have been basically all of my girlfriends in the past. And so yeah, we'll see how that unfolds. But thank
Well,
you, I
I'll
appreciate that.
pray you meet a nice one. How tall are you?
I'm 6 foot.
Whoa! Oh, the ladies like that.
David. Oh,
Yes,
David.
it's true. It's true. It's true. I know. My wife. We watch a lot of reality TV, and it's always about the height. It's always about the height. I don't know why. I don't know why. I guess they want to feel petite. They want to feel, feminine and stuff like that. So that's exciting. Yeah. So I can't wait. I can't wait to hear what happens, and stay in touch. Okay.
Thank you, David. Sending you
God
a whole
bless you,
lot of
my
love.
friend.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.